Thank you, Sandy, and good morning, everyone. I always love coming here to the portico. Last time I was here, maybe about a year and a half ago. Some of you may have been here. There was a ceremony where we dedicated a vase of soil taken from the Hillsborough River, the site of a lynching in 1934. Mr. Robert Johnson. There were 5 documented cases of lynching. And I suspect that perhaps for more than that may not have been documented in Hillsborough County. So we had a ceremony here. That soil was taken to Montgomery, Alabama, placed in the Legacy Museum. If you ever get an opportunity to visit the Legacy Museum in Montgomery, I encourage you to do so. It's amazing. They have over 800 of these vases taken from places all over the United States. So Tampa is taking its rightful place in preserving our history, because Black history is American history. And so with that, again, good morning. I did want to introduce, sitting at my table, my fiancée, Gloria Sheldon. My son, Marcel Hearns. And his wife, my daughter-in-law, Candace Hearns. And as we said earlier, there are some co-workers here who I work with at the Tampa History Center. You met Ashley Morrow. Ashley is serving in a very important capacity as the manager of Tampa's Black History Museum, formerly the St. James Episcopal Church, and it's just a stone's throw from Periodic Park, just 2 blocks from here, 1213 Central Avenue. So that beautiful red brick church is going to be, we think, probably in about 18 months, Tampa's first Black History Museum, something Tampa never had before. We've had buildings with elements of a museum, but this will be the first museum. And that's important because the location is a very special place. I worked for many years, as was said earlier, with the city of Tampa, and Dale Acosta and several of the people who worked with the city did a survey of the historic buildings in this community. This was maybe 20 years ago. And they found that that building, the former St. James Episcopal Church, was the most sound, the best constructed facility. I know we have architects here, so I can't get into the language you use, but it was in real good shape. And so the Tampa Housing Authority, which owns that area, all of the buildings in that area, which used to be Central Park Village, bought the church, spent over $2 million renovating that building. And so it sat there for about a year when they were trying to decide exactly what they wanted to do, although they knew they wanted it to be a museum. And so Jerome Ryans and Leroy Moore of the Tampa Housing Authority approached the Tampa Bay History Center, C.J. Robertson and I and some other folk, and we decided that we would take this on to develop Tampa's Black History Museum. And so we're not waiting until the doors open for a museum. We actually had several activities there. How many of you have been to an activity in the last year and a half? Good, great. So you've seen the building and you ain't seen nothing yet. Wait until it becomes a museum. It's going to be an amazing place. And one of the things we've been doing, we have every other month a Black History book club talk. And the numbers are growing for the people who come to the book club discussions. It's the last Monday in every other month. So the next one is, when is it actually? Last Monday in August, thank you, at 5:30. They're free, you're all invited to come. We discuss books written by Black authors about Black topics of interest. That's just one of the things that we're doing. The other thing, I'll just make a little pitch for Tampa's Black History Museum ambassadors. So anyone who would like to volunteer specifically to work with us at the Black History Museum, if you'll see Ashley, this morning before you leave. I'm sure she'll be happy to get your information. And we're recruiting right now volunteers. There's always been an opportunity, and there still is, to volunteer as a docent or a guide at the Tampa History Center. And Billy Somerville, one of my co-workers, I think everybody may know Billy. Billy and I have been working to build up the outreach that the History Center does. I mean, of course, the museum is open 7 days a week, 10 to 5. In addition to that, we do a lot of outreach. This program is just one example. So I've probably taken half my 10 minutes already. But let me just say that I'm so glad that the judge talked about components of voting and registering and those dates, because it seems like you've really got your P's and Q's to keep up with everything that voting involves. There have been some changes over the years. People have to make sure they're registered, make sure if you like to vote in person, you're going to the right polling place. So we have to educate ourselves and stay on top of that. One of the things that I'm going to be talking about next week, and Billy mentioned, or someone mentioned, Archives Week. Billy, it was Billy. I don't know how he keeps up with all of the activities going on, because we keep stretching him. We keep adding more and more and more activities. So Monday at 3 o'clock at City Council, in the City Council chambers, there'll be a program where we'll be talking about Tampa 100 years ago. So 1924. Some very interesting things were happening here. And then Wednesday next week at 5:30, Ashley and I will be doing a presentation specifically on the scrub. And we're right on the western boundary of what was called the scrub for over 100 years ago. This is where the newly freed black people settled. Many blacks already living here during slavery in this area, in the central Tampa area. And of course, that led to the 1950s, the opening of Central Park Village, public housing for some 500 families. And then about 20 years ago, the Housing Authority began redeveloping that area. It is now Encore. And if you have not been over to the area, we are still doing tours, Tampa History Center. Ashley does most of the tours. I developed a tour we call Central Avenue West, which actually focuses to some extent on Oak Lawn Cemetery. But as I've said to my friends, I don't do walking tours during the summer. You lose folk after about 30 minutes. It is just entirely too warm. But we do tours, year-round, downtown, Ybor. So please go to our website, tampahistorycenter.org, and you'll see all of the activities that we're involved in. One other thing I want to mention, and then I know we have to stop for Q&A, with the outreach that we're doing. Every year I look forward to working with the city of Tampa for Archives Awareness Week. They are the custodians of our history, the records of city council meetings and all the activities that took place from year to year. And they have an excellent staff over there, Jennifer Deeks, Shirley Fox Knowles, and some other folks. But talking about voting, and I'll stop after this, but one of the things I'm going to be talking a little more about is the legacy of the White Municipal Parliament, which we had here in Tampa from 1910 until 1947. I was born in 1948, so it wasn't that long ago, where you had to be white, and up until 1920, you had to be a male to vote in municipal elections. So black folk did not have the franchise for all of those years. When finally things changed, and it even took a few years after 1947 for it to really take effect in Tampa, probably closer to 1950. Black people were at the mercy of others to take an interest in those things that were important to them, with no elected officials. coming from the black community. And it's interesting to look at the population from decade to decade to decade. You see that the black population was always around 20%, 22, 23% of the city's total population. That's almost a fourth of our population. So you're invited Monday at 3 o'clock, City Council, and the Tampa History Center will be doing our part for Archives Awareness Week, and then Wednesday next week at 5:30 over at Tampa's Black History Museum, and we'll be talking about Tampa 100 years ago. So with that, I'll stop, and Dale, thank you so much.
I won't introduce myself as an architect this time. Stan Loper. I kind of grew up in Tampa Heights. Even though I lived in Seminole Heights, we went to church. Tampa Heights, the corner of Central and Ross. But the question I have is not architectural. It's about your shirt. My brother, there's a tradition in my family to create these quilts that have something to do with the family. Every person, every child has a square, and it's a tradition. And I wonder, your shirt looks kind of like a quilt almost, and I wonder, can you tell me any traditions or any history behind that pattern or anything like that?
Well, I can say that it comes from Ghana and West Africa, and every year, every other year, I go up to Brooklyn where I have a cousin. I was actually born in the Bronx, New York, so I look forward to going up during the summertime. Not in the winter, but during the summertime. I'm Floridian, so you know how it gets. And so I don't have a lot of the history of the specific patterns that you're talking about, but the kente cloth patterns are recognized all over the world. And you're going to see, I promise you, more of this in the museum when it opens, and then we'll be able to actually interpret to some extent, you know, more about the origin of the patterns that we brought here with us from West Africa. And I just make one other comment. If you go to the Tampa History Center on the 3rd floor, where we have our permanent exhibit, Travails and Triumphs, which focuses on Black history here over the last 500 years in Tampa Bay, you see Black Seminole dolls, and you'll see some of these same patterns. Because we, as much as we could, even though there were efforts to stifle us transferring our culture, there were still elements of West African culture that Africans brought with them to the New World. And so in Florida, when we began to intermarry with the Seminoles, and we sort of became one big family, Blacks and Seminole Indians, you see the Black Seminole patterns that have a lot of elements of West African clothing.
There have been some laws passed that have changed the teaching of history in the schools and been negative in the sense of communicating Black history. And I just wondered whether the Black History Museum has any plans to have courses or try to make up for that lack in the public schools.
Well, thank you. And yes, we are keeping our eye on the ball. It seems to move from time to time with different changes in our state laws, the Department of Education, and what is and what is not acceptable in the public classrooms. So we have continued to do some of the things that we're doing. For example, yesterday, every Thursday during the summer, I teach a 1-hour class on Black history at a private school. We still have the freedom to do these things in private schools. And so this is targeted towards students, primarily middle school and high school students. The Tampa History Center also has representation on Hillsborough County's African American Coalition, which involves all the public schools, and we support every February a Black History Rainbow, where students, and you don't have to be African American to take part in it, but it's called a Black History Rainbow because it focuses on Black history. And a lot of it is Hillsborough County Black history, which we don't have a course on, we just have to kind of learn that as we go. So we partner with the school district to support the Black History Rainbow every February. And there are other projects and programs that we do throughout the year. Where's Gloria Jean? There she is. Gloria Jean Royston also is involved in tours with the History Center, and she also does a lot. One other thing I'll mention, 2 weeks ago, this town was painted purple. You see those guys walking around with the purple shirts? There were only about 30,000 of us here. It's my fraternity, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. And we actually had a silent march from the convention center down the Riverwalk to Curtis Dixon Park. There were probably 5,000 black males who took part in that march. And there were some wives and some other females there too, but primarily this was the fraternity taking a stand against some of the policies that have been put in place here in the state of Florida that stifle the teaching and the celebration of a part of our history, Black history, but it's a part of American history, right? And also we gave away maybe about 4,000 books to children that are written by black authors about black topics. So there is a lot going on to kind of help support the teaching of black history beyond what is allowed in the public schools at the History Center, as well as other groups that some of us are part of.
I love that you mentioned that this is going to be an all hands on deck and people from different backgrounds are going to help part in this. What are they going to do about artifacts? If they have artifacts in their closet, if their grandmother, both black, white, Latino, Afro-Latino, what are they to do with these artifacts?
Okay, well thank you, Ashley. And while we are developing the theme, there's still some decisions that have to be made. So it's going to be a Black History Museum, but what will the focus be? We can't, of course, focus on everything. But as we get closer to zeroing in on what the theme or themes will be, the History Center is going to put a call out for artifacts, folks who have things that they would like to donate, and hopefully it's something 50 years or more older than today, so that it is historic, that we would put in our collection. Does not mean that everything that's donated to the History Center will be on exhibit, but it will be in our collection. And you know, we have thousands of items that are in our collection, and some of those I pulled from for the Travails and Triumphs exhibit that we have. So at the appropriate time, the History Center is going to put out a public call for artifacts that help tell the story, help interpret the story of black people in Tampa. It is Tampa's Black History Museum, so there will be a heavy emphasis on local history. So, for example, when we did Travails and Triumphs, we had someone actually give their class ring, which I thought was very generous, from 1968. You know, personal items, not awards, not plaques, but we're looking for personal items that help interpret the story of the Scrub and of Tampa's black community. So, kind of a long way to say, keep listening, keep watching, and we're going to put that call out. And you know, that's a very generous way that everyone can contribute. By looking in your attic or looking in an old trunk that you've had for many years, and some of these things, I made a decision last comment to give something personal of mine, a high school jacket, because I said, well, first of all, I can't fit in it anymore. Way too little for me. And I wanted to share it with the community. So, you know, while my son is here, and I have another son and I have 2 daughters, and they would appreciate these things, but why not share them with a broader audience? So now, that's what we're going to be asking people to do, probably pretty soon. I would think sometime later this year.
Myers, a resident of the east side of the county. You mentioned that you're going to be requesting assistance from volunteers. Can you share requirements to become a volunteer and the expectations?
Okay, I'm going to let Ashley go answer that, but they will be called ambassadors, and so we probably have 25 or 30 volunteers already. This is just word of mouth. through our book clubs and other things that we're doing. So actually, you can maybe elaborate on that just a little. We're still developing a handbook, so it's still in the process. But,
That's a great question. So we're calling them the ambassadors, as Mr. Herns mentioned, and we have had a great amount of interest in becoming an ambassador at Tampa Black History Museum, and that is awesome. But we also want the people that come to be committed. We want them to be willing to do what needs to be done, so these programs and everything is top tier. Time commitment. As of right now, we're doing programs, so they would be required to come to programs and probably require and something like that. But, you know, willing to help out, setting up and breaking things down. As far as training, we're working on a training program for these volunteers, so that way when they are approached by the public, they know what to say. It's going to be really intense. I mean, like going on tours and we're giving the presentations and walking through and making sure they know as much as we possibly can get them to know.
Professor Hearns, all of the effort that you put in over the years to preserve Tampa's Black history. Some years ago, I began, my cousins and my family and I began collecting artifacts, and we put them on display in a restaurant that we created, and it's called Café. So we recently opened here in Seminole Heights. The original location actually is in New Haven, Connecticut, in front of Yale University, where I opened 20 years ago, showcasing Tampa's Black history. And that restaurant is still operating, but we finally were able to come down and open here. And I invite you personally, please come down and sit down, have a café con leche with me, and let me show you and share with you. And please consider, please, I know you're not going to, leave us out of the story and the work that you all are doing. We have a beautiful image that our grandmother left us in a photo. That's a mural inside the restaurant, and it's of the old Cuban patio. And when the elders come in to see that, today they get emotional, they get so excited because it's from 1944, and it's just full of a very, very positive picture, full of Black folks having a good time. And the Patio Maceo was the place where Black America and Black Cuba came together like no other place on planet Earth. And we want, we need your assistance to help us preserve, protect, and tell that story. So please take me up on the offer and come out and visit us, okay?
The name of your restaurant?
Soul de Cuba Café. We're 6428 North Florida Avenue, right in the heart of Seminole Heights. And we showcase real Ybor City comida criolla, recipes that have been passed down for many generations. We, over 125 years, we actually never lost contact with our family in Guanajuato, Cuba. I take people to Cuba on cultural exchanges. Been doing that since 2010. So we really believe in that connection. We're working with historians in Cuba as well that are helping to tell the story of the old cultural ties between Ybor City and Guanajuato. Jose Marti's two famous speeches, one was in Guanajuato and the other one was in Ybor City. And that along with many other things, and so I'd love to be able to sit down and share with you what I've learned. I also have a very good friend of mine who's a filmmaker in Cuba. Her name is Gloria Rolando, and she's done a number of documentaries. She's working on one now on the Buffalo soldiers who stayed in Cuba, the ones who decided to stay, and their legacies there. And I'd love to connect you with her and as well. I know your plate is full, but anything that we can collaborate with you.
If I can comment about Dale is moving the mic, yes, give him a hand, please. Excellent information. When I was very young, I remember my mother going to some of the dances at what they call the Cuban Hall patio. That's what Black folk call it. I don't know what others call it. And it was actually not too far from the former Tampa Park Apartments off Nebraska, just a little bit east of 7th Avenue. And General Antonio Maceo is a name that more people should be familiar with. And I love that mural on the front of the new Cuban Hall patio, Marti Maceo on 7th Avenue, with Jose Marti right next to General Antonio Maceo, black and white, fighting for the same cause. What a wonderful statement that is to all of us. And so we know about Paulina Pedrosa and how she, this courageous woman, helped to raise funds to support the revolution and so forth. So that is part of the story that I tell when I have the opportunity. I was pleased to be part of the group that had a lot of, I guess you could say, we sort of chose the persons who are represented in bronze busts along the Riverwalk, and Paulina Pedrosa was one of the first, this beautiful Afro-Cuban woman, the first woman from Tampa to be inducted into the Florida Women's Hall of Fame. So, yeah.
First of all, I want to let the public service announcement. There was a discussion about recent legislation that had been passed by the legislature specifically regarding education. But I just want everyone to know that the first line of looking at a piece of legislation as for constitutionality lies in the county court judges. So that's important. Now, what we rule is appeal, and ultimately the higher court will have the first say. But just so you know, regular jurisdiction is going to lie in the county court. We're going to look at the constitutionality of that. So I urge you, I wish, I know there's been a lot of legislation that's been passed the last year, the last 2 years. I wish that was before an election, because we have judicial cycles every 2 years. But look at what the county judges are doing on that, and look at how those cases go up on the field. So I just wanted you to know that the constitutionality of those would be challenged in the county court should be. Now, typically they get challenged in Leon County, because that's ultimately the legislature decides the law, decided by the governor. Anyways, now my questions are with that. I just want a little PSA, we do a lot of constitutionality at the county court level. So you're talking about getting donations and artifacts, and the question I had is, have you run into or have you thought about, and if so, what's the thought process behind where an artifact comes from? And let me lay some background. I grew up in mostly Northern Virginia, so I was spoiled going to Smithsonian museums all the time when my dad was at the Pentagon. My best friend growing up, his wife was a docent for a long time at the African Art Museum that the Smithsonian put on. And then she went into procurement in terms of getting exhibits and getting donations. And they had a big controversy, at least in-house, and didn't really make its way out so much, was a lot of the artwork that they had donated there was by Bill Cosby. And that created a big stir, and there was a big dilemma on what to do. And look, I'm a historian at heart. I think the most important thing is getting history out there. Of course, that was a different controversy than you see in other artworks where the artwork was procured illegally, i.e. people that had bought or smuggled or stolen artworks from Germany that the Nazis had taken, right? And so it was a little bit different because those were taken from people versus this was something that was given. But there was still a little bit, I know, in terms of, I remember this happening in conversation, Colin Moore, I think was one of the docents that was talking about what to do about that. And, as a historian, I think it's important to get it out there. First of all, I probably
Thank you, Judge. And we're very careful when it comes to due diligence for items that are donated to the Tampa History Center. And by the way, we always prefer gifts and not loans because loans are kind of tricky. So for those items that are given to us, our board of directors has a collections committee that looks at all of these items that are donated. Our staff person who specializes in this area also does her due diligence. There are a number of agreement forms that the donor has to sign. And so I don't know if that's ever been a real problem in the history of the Tampa History Center. I've been there 3 years. I know it hasn't been a problem during the last 3 years, but that's a good point. And I will share that with Heather when I get back to our office as far as what extra steps will we take and have we been taking, because we've been collecting artifacts for many, many years at the History Center. What steps are we taking to make sure that what we are being given is acceptable and appropriate? And what do we do if we find out it's not? Those are good questions I haven't really thought about, but we will be. Actually, did you have your hand? Okay, yeah, so there's more than just give us what you got and go put it on display. That doesn't work like that.
Here's some valuable. I wanted to let you know that I won my 7th grade Black Rainbow competition. It may seem like a really small thing, but as a transplant from DC and coming down to Tampa in the early 90s, it was still very much visually segregated. Who lived where and who participated with whom. So coming down here and being able to, and living in a community where nobody looks like me, to engage in that program was really quite a lifeline. And it was one of my favorite memories. So what can we do to help protect programming like that so that children in their schools can still have access to it?
Good question. Well, there are 2 school board members, Hillsborough County school board members, who are spearheading the Black History Rainbow through the African American alliance that they have. And that's Lynn Gray, who is chairman, and you know Lynn Gray, school board member, and Henry Shake Washington. I don't know whether we can still call him Shake or not, Judge. I know that's some conversation also. Everybody knows him as Shake. But anyway, so Mr. Washington and Ms. Gray, so they're very active on the African American History Task Force in Hillsborough County. So they are looking for donations for the winners of the competition, the Rainbow competition. We alternate the final, and it's held in maybe 70 or 80 schools throughout Hillsborough County. And when they have the local competition, they narrow it down to the finalists. And the finalists come to either Middleton High School one year or the next year, Blake High School. And so they rotate between those 2 schools because they were, during the 1971 desegregation era, they were the 2 black schools, high schools that black students could attend up until 1971, with few exceptions. There were a few black students who went to Hillsborough or Jefferson, but only a few. So they're always looking for people who want to donate toward the students who win in the elementary, middle, and high school competition. So that's a specific way I think that people can support these students learning Black history. So that's just one example.
My name is Francis Chief Jennings. I finished from Howard Blake High School, third graduating class 1959. I'm 82 years old. I went to Howard Elementary, which is to the north of us. When Howard was there, I was inspired by Fred Lucas' book that he wrote years ago. I was never interested in history at all, not at all. I lived in the neighborhood where Armature Works is now, along the east banks of the Hillsborough River. I'm trying to get my 2 minutes here. I'm the former president of Blake High School Athletic Booster Club, and I work with students at Blake. I was a former member of the History Center, was initially on Florida Avenue until we moved to where the History Center is now. I teach Black History at Black High School. And this is how I do it. The history teacher always has someone come in and speak. I'm the speaker. I motivate the kids where they can ask questions, and I give them the hangout, and I ask them specific questions about Black history, and most of it is Black history camp that they did not know. What's the oldest school in Hillsborough County? What's the second oldest? Which one was African American? What was Caucasian? And you would be surprised at the information about our schools that the kids don't know. In the Genealogy Society, I do schools. I love schools. There's a book that Dr. Leonard put out when he was superintendent of Hillsborough County. I would advise you to do it. There are 3 books out. One is at the History Center, one is at the school board, and one is at the John Children's Library downtown. There's a lot of information. Cantor Brown, those of you may have heard of Cantor Brown, he wrote about Black history in Hillsborough County. It was in your book, and that's what initiated me on my history research that I didn't like, but I'm just so enthused about it. I'm so enthused about sharing information without saying, oh, I'm going to teach Black history. I'm going to do this. Black history is interwoven into the county and the city of Tampa. There's a lot of history here. Kim's always driving me around and saying, Kim, this is this, this is this, this was this, this was this, this was this. Our history is our history. We cannot change our history. We have to evaluate it, love it, and share it with others. I love Tampa. I love talking about the history center. I love talking about everything that's going on here. The neighborhood, and Burger Brothers, if you have the opportunity to go to John Jefferson Library, look at some of those photos, and they give you a lot of history, and especially the History Center. Become a member of the History Center, you get a lot of information. There's a lot out there you can receive. There's a lot out there you can share. And please love Hillsborough County, Tampa. Whether the person is Hispanic, and I did go to the Cuban Hall patio and had a ball with that when we get there as a young adult. There's a lot of history that we're not aware of. It's out there, but it's interwoven. We have to look for it. And those of us who find it, we have to publish and give it like Fred did in his book when he wrote his book. So there's a lot out there, but the main thing we have to keep our love. It's not about us. It's about Hillsborough County. It's about Tampa, and it's about our history. All of our history, which include African American history.
As we close, Ms. Jennings is one of those persons whose voice you actually can hear when you visit Café History Center. Hillsborough County Public Library did an oral history project, an amazing project, maybe 15 years ago, quite a while ago, and they interviewed Black people who were primarily natives of Tampa. And you'll hear her voice, and you'll see a photo talking about that neighborhood she mentioned, where my father also grew up on Highland Avenue with Woolworth Parkway. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Bill.